everyone. Welcome to the June 8th meeting of the Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee. My name is Maggie Sharon, and I call this meeting to order at 6:56 p.m. This open meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020. Information on how to join our remote school committee meetings and meeting agendas are posted on the Dover-Sherborn District website. Please note that our meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that anything that you broadcast might be captured by the recording. We're going to begin tonight with the first item on our agenda as public comment. Actually, before we have public comment, I first want to welcome our newest member, Tracy Mannion. Tracy, welcome to the school committee. We're happy to have you. I just want to sort of wave and say hi to the folks.
Thanks very much. Hi, everybody. Very happy to be here and to serve you for the next year. And thank you, Anne, for all your help, by the way. You've been very helpful to me.
Great. Thank you. Welcome, Tracy. Okay, so next item on our agenda, we will hear community comments. Community comments are an opportunity for members of our community to be heard. We respectfully request that you make your comments brief and that you move the discussion forward by adding new information. Please try to avoid repeating points that have already been made. For community comments, please virtually raise your hand. I can see some folks have done that already. Thank you. And wait to be called on. When you speak, please begin by stating your name and whether you live in Dover, Sherborn, Boston, or whether you're a member of our faculty. Community comments are an opportunity for our school committee to listen to members of the community, but not a forum for answering questions or engaging in debate. Once the public comment section of our meeting has been concluded, we will move on to other business, and unsolicited comments from the community will no longer be permitted. This is standard operating procedure in school committee meetings across our 3 school districts. Thank you. So we're going to begin just looking at the hands up. I have Carolyn Malloy, and then followed by John Lynn, and then followed by Kathy Weld. Okay, Mr. Lynn, it's Miss Malloy.
Hello, my name is Carolyn Malloy, and I'm from Dover. And recently I ran for the Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee. As many of you know, acting committee members Judy Miller and Lynn Collins, in an endorsement for Maggie Sharon, tried to weaponize a privileged conversation that went on between me and the committee members back in January. I raised a legitimate concern about the possibility of pornographic material embedded in school search engines across the country, an issue even the Boston Globe raised awareness around. I simply asked the administration to look into this matter. I received a kind and thorough response back from Assistant Superintendent Beth McCoy, assuring me due to various firewalls, indeed, our children are safe. I thanked her for her comprehensive response. However, Judy Miller, acting with Lynn Collins, made me a target in her endorsement for Maggie Sharon, forwarding my personal correspondence with the school to their extensive email list, even encouraging it to be forwarded to friends and neighbors, stating, I oppose recent efforts in our schools to identify and address systemic inequities, and that I sent emails to the school committee championing false claims with regard to certain aspects of public education, which align with alt-right theories. When I sent my email to the RSC, it was my expectation that the communication would be held in confidence, absent of a FOIA request or my consent to share. This clear breach of public trust is made worse by the fact that my correspondence was labeled as being false and alt-right. We may have disagreements on what is appropriate for public school education, but is it the goal of the RSC to defame and label all parents who may have contrasting viewpoints with themselves, from themselves? Folks from all political affiliations from across town were rightfully outraged at this egregious attempt to slander my candidacy when these women abused their position at the school board for political gain. A letter was quickly distributed around town calling for the immediate resignation of Miller and Collins due to this gross exploitation of their position on the school board. To date, there has been no public apology regarding this clear breach of trust to myself or the community. This serious breach of ethics must be swiftly addressed. The school board cannot function properly when constituents fear they will be attacked, slandered, and exploited by sitting school committee members. This is no way to run a school system. What kind of example does this set for our children? A group has formed due to the non-inclusive and very concerning behavior of the mentioned sitting members of the DSRC. The community demands acting committee members address this very serious issue in a public manner, so trust may be restored, if that is even at all possible. We would also like a public explanation as to whether Maggie Sharon was aware of this email prior to it going out. Once made aware of this email, Maggie never disavowed it. All sitting school committee members have remained silent on this issue, thereby making them complicit in this action. School committee member ethics on page 14 of the manual clearly states, a school committee member in her relations with her community should remember that she represents the entire community at all times and accept the office as a committee member as a means of unselfish service with no intent to play politics. Based on this very clear ethics violation, is this committee going to allow its members to use privileged communications to slander parents or candidates who may wish to run for school committee in the future? The Dover-Sherborn community is awaiting a public response from all of you regarding this very serious breach of trust. To the extent you believe this issue can be ignored or will be forgotten by the community, you are mistaken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Malloy. Mr. Lynn, and then Ms. Weld, and then Mr. Whittlesley.
Thank you, Maggie. Yes, I want to speak to two areas. One is the IC, right? Through the election, I also very disturbed. And the other one is about, middle school, high school, because that's the regional committee, what I care most about it. So on the election, I echo Ms. Malloy. I read that email very disturbed. At least unethical if it's not illegal using, personal email for political gains. So I'm very disturbed by that. And furthermore, I just want to lay out some concrete suggestions for a reform, right? One is we probably need to think about, all school committee, term limit, maybe 2 terms. The thing is, this is not entitlement, right? I mean, you guys doing great job. Thank you very much. But it's let the other people involved. Other parents are passionate, fair-minded people, equally qualified, get involved. I mean, yeah, we have an election, but don't take that entitlement. So the email I saw, a lot of arrogance, right? Oh, other candidates are not qualified. Come on, every passionate parent is qualified. I will say that for DS. We are fortunate with a good parents community. The next suggestion is communication, right? Like the community comments, probably 10, 15 minutes, right? I try to be sort of like a fast, but we really need a regular, sort of like a quarterly, a listening tour to all parents. Let's just open to all parents, 1 hour, at least a quarterly, just listen, right? All different sides of opinion. Let's put on the table and have a good debate. And move on, right? So that's communication is the key. So, and the next thing I want to, don't want to take up too much time is middle school, high school, right? My oldest one in high school, and my 2 little ones are gonna come in there as well, right? So I'm very concerned about it. So number one is academic, right? Academic, we need to make up the grounds we lost COVID. We know that, and particularly we need to think about maybe college admission counselor. We need to probably staffing up. I heard a lot of questions about that. Do we have enough, admission counselor to helping kids go to the college they want? So, and also teaching excellence, right? I heard the different sides of it. Majority great teachers, but we want a quality teacher. We always want better teachers. Evaluation is key. How we evaluate that, right? So I want to that. And the next one is STEM, right? That's a big subject. We probably need to stuffing up. We really need to look at that, like in terms of global competition we're facing, right? Next century, we're looking forward, right? Every generation looking forward. We need to do better. So how can we sort of like have a partnership with business, with organization, government to sort of a partnership, internship? Let's do more of that, right? And the next thing is about sort of leadership, mental health, or social emotional EQ side of the kids, right? It's a big thing. So not only people knows about math, right? About leaders, because they're going to take over from us. 20 years from now, hopefully we're still here and we're aging. the next generation got to take America forward. So do we have that grand, ambition and the capability of doing that? So, and the last one I want to talk about data collection, right? Everything about hearing, from parents, from a community, data collection, regular, systematic, anonymous, fair data collection throughout the school system, students' evaluation of teachers' feedback. Let's put on the table, have an honest discussion and find the best way forward. Don't have to be unanimous, but things need to put on the table. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, Maggie. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, John. Next, Mrs. Weld or Ms. Weld.
Thank you. Kathy Well, 29 Main Street, Dover, former Dover School Committee back in the 80s, but now speaking as a taxpayer who's very concerned to learn about the direction of some of the curriculum things at the school I learned about it during the recent campaign, and the introduction of elements of critical race theory into all aspects of the curriculum throughout the district. I attended an evening at the Chickering School recently and heard more of the same kind of thing, which critical race theory I regard as a very destructive tool, actually, that forces children to see everything through the lens of race, pits races against each other, and is ultimately socialist or Marxist at its core and destructive for our country and its families. And I really, I feel like we need to have, this is a very difficult environment in which to actually have a discussion, because it's gotten more and more difficult to have such discussions. But I would urge our administrators and school committees to rethink this course of action. And I, as a taxpayer, want our schools to stay strong and focused on academics. And I learned recently that we're getting social justice and activism in a Spanish class, and also LGBTQ pride and activism for the rest of the year in that class. And I don't think that that's going to help us maintain our standing as the top or one of the top performing public schools in the Boston area by doing that. So again, I would ask us to hold to our academic ideals and leave these other things for outside the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Weld. Mr. Whittlesley.
Hi, how are you? William Whittlesey, 64 Greenwood Street, Sherborn. I had a concern after reading Mr. Jaffe's resignation letter and his concerns that there were ethical violations in regards to the open meeting law. I was hoping that the school committee would address those concerns. I know that just talking to people in the community, that this issue is not going to go away. And I'm really hoping that the school committee will address this issue in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Whittlesley. Mr. Collins.
Okay, thank you. So appreciate the time, and thanks to the committee for everything you do. I just wanted to talk about a couple of facts and set the record straight, if I could. And the first one is that the email in question that was forwarded is not confidential. It wasn't requested to be confidential. And even if it had been, it could not under Massachusetts law. So it is not a confidential email. Open meeting laws are required to encourage transparency. People may not like it. They may not disagree with fact sharing, but you can't accurately say that it was a confidential email. The fact remains it was not confidential. Also, there's the question of the content of what was in the email from a candidate. The content of the email was a webinar from a group that is sponsored by an anti-LGBTQ hate group. I'll say that again. It was a webinar sponsored by a group that is facilitated by an anti-LGBT hate group. So that is the type of material that should not be sent to the schools to spend their time on. And it is understandably a concern that was raised. For those that say that the school committee members sharing this type of information would chill discussion, I'd offer this. In the narrow, hopefully very narrow cases where prospective candidates or candidates to be share material from hate groups, yes, it could discourage that kind of behavior. And I hope it does. The school committee and the administration has better things to do than deal with this type of material. The standard should be that we should not only find acceptable, but embrace. With that, thanks again for the time and the opportunity to speak. And thanks for all the work you do on behalf of our children.
Thank you. It says Nancy, but I think it's Mr. Guerin.
Yes, that's correct. It's Rick Guerin. 28 Valley Road, Dover. Last month's Dover's regional school committee election is not the first time parents have been insulted or overlooked by members of the school committee, or even those in the school administration selected by this body. Some of you know I tried to address this in private with committee members, but was unsuccessful in engaging in productive dialogue. Members of boards who leverage insider information or use deceit for their own personal gain may be celebrated in political circles, but in educational circles, this behavior is a poor example to set for our children. I recognize that we have talented individuals on this committee that have budgetary and administrative experience, but without a foundation tempered in ethical treatment for the families you were elected to represent, your decisions and actions will have a negative impact on the children of Dover and Sherborn. We can all do better in our communication with one another, and it is that I'm trying to encourage. We all have the opportunity to reflect on our actions and do better. I am not unwilling to help. As a licensed educator and administrator of a local preschool, I have knowledge of state regulations and experience working with families. I'm happy to offer my services to help if I can. My hope is that when a new task force is created to evaluate the start time change for the schools, local preschools will be included as they have knowledge and experience that was not represented in the original flawed decision-making process that was voted upon during a joint school committee meeting held April 30th, 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guerin. Do we have any further community comment?
I'd like to say something.
So can you identify yourself? Sorry, I can't see you on my screen.
John Stelberger, I live in Dover. So after reading Michael Jaffe's resignation letter and then the joint Michael Jaffe, Grant Stephen May 15th email, I was appalled. The unethical conduct of the school committee members, Judy Miller and Lynn Collins, it's a disgrace to our community. Is this the school committee that's caring for our children? I really find this behavior disgusting, and I think Judy Miller and Lynn Collins should resign. I also think that the school committee needs to take a good look at itself, look in the mirror, and see, look at yourselves and this unethical behavior. You always say we are DS. Well, you are DS, and it's apparent to see why Dover has gone from number 1 to number 9 in school rankings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stelberger. Any further comment? Okay. Hearing none, this concludes this portion of our meeting, and we will now move on to our regular business. Thank you to all who participated tonight. All right. Our next item on our agenda is staff reports, and I believe Dr. Keo, hi, if those folks who are still on the call could mute themselves, please. Thanks. So we're going to hear first from Mr. Kellett, and then from Mr. Smith, and then we'll hear the warrant report. Mr. Kellett?
Thank you, Mrs. Sharon. Welcome, Mrs. Mannion. I just have a few things I wanted to touch base on. Unfortunately, in our report, we did not get in our state results from the science fair. We had several teams that moved on to the state competition, and we had one group that received an honorable mention, 3 groups that received 3rd place finishes, and one team consisting of Garrett Wilson and Alex Hadfield had a second place finish and a nomination to the national competition. So congratulations to them. Our science fair competitors did an outstanding job this year. So we're quite proud of them, and congratulations to Ms. Rush for guiding them through that process. Just this past week, our peer leadership group hosted an event, a Let's Stand Together event that was a little different than in the past. In the past, we had walked as a school. This year it was done through PE and students wearing shirts that were with monies that were collected from donations from outside groups. The student leaders for that were Katie Bingham, Annie Loeffler, and Lily Hatfield, under the direction of Mrs. Merritt. And a special thanks has to go out to Detective Godino and Officer Colo, who came up and played kickball with the kids during their gym classes. We're looking forward to next week, the end of the year. Our 6th and 7th grade teams are preparing some events for the last day of school, just as a thank you to the students for what you might say was a rather different year with many challenges, but they've done an outstanding job and positive. And our 8th grade teams are trying to come up with some events that will not be exactly the same as we have done historically, but it includes a lunch on the 16th and then a recognition day. We'll have our assembly on the 18th in the morning out on Norris Errol Field. Mr. Smith has said he will come over and welcome our rising freshman class. And that is it. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you. I really enjoyed reading the report. If you are joining us from the public, it is worth a read to figure out what is going on in the middle school. There's some really nice things going on there. I love hearing about the science fair, really exciting things. And I was particularly interested in the section from social studies and the new civics requirement that I think is part of the state law. Kids all did a civics project, and I thought those were really interesting. So thank you to the 8th grade social studies department. I also appreciate that they have the students take a version of the citizenship test. I think that, you know, as we're all here thinking about local and civic government, that you guys are doing a wonderful job of making sure our students are prepared. So thank you. Other members of the committee have questions or comments for Mr. Kellett? Mrs. Hovey.
Thank you, Mrs. Sharon. Thank you, Scott and Anna. Also, I love reading your reports. I have a quick question. You touched upon it, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about what's going on this summer for students who may have either feel like they lost a little bit, have a little bit of catch up, and also perhaps even more importantly, for those who may be still struggling with mental health and social and emotional learning issues. Thanks.
Sure. Our staff has, they've identified some students they feel who could use some additional support, and Kate McCarthy has been instrumental in putting together some opportunities for them to fill in any gaps. Our teachers will be, our English teachers are putting out their summer reading lists, and our math department has always given students the opportunity to order. There's a math publication that's through Tri-C Publications, summer refresher for math. But there are definitely, we are working with Kate McCarthy and looking to provide our students with any opportunity we can to get them back to a place where they will feel comfortable to move forward. And our teachers are also, in meetings, they're sharing with each other where students are at. And, as Mr. Smith said at the last meeting, our teachers have done a great job. Our students have done a great job, and they're not as far behind as we, as some other districts might be, just because our students are vested, our teachers have put in the effort. The social emotional piece, that's always a concern, be it pandemic or not, but particularly with the pandemic. So our guidance will be not daily, but they will be in regular checking their email if families reach out to them or students reach out to them to try to provide them with the supports they need.
Thanks. I'd like to just reiterate really quickly that, so if folks feel that they don't know quite where to turn for their students, they can reach out to guidance, the middle school, and they will get a response at some, and they're not.
Or myself or Mrs. Hurley.
Great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Mrs. Miller. Judy?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, I've been meaning to email the Scott and John and Anna and Ann Deaver Keegan simply to say, to acknowledge what an incredibly difficult year this has been, and to say thank you. You guys have done a phenomenal job of educating our kids, and people don't always say thank you. And I really want to tell you that it was a job well done. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Other questions, concerns about middle school? All right, I will just reiterate also what Ann said. I know, there's a lot of uncertainty for folks coming back from full-time, and just to reach out to your student's guidance counselor, to Mr. Kellett or Ms. Hurley, if you are worried about them or you feel like maybe they need some kind of support, and whatever, people are prepared to help. And so please do that. All right, I see a thumbs up from Ms. Hurley. People are prepared to help. All right, moving on, Mr. Smith.
Hi, Mr. Sharon. Before I go into my report, a letter was actually sent out by the adjustment counselors and the clinicians to every student and their parent in grades 6 through 12, outlining the various resources and things that are available for students if they're struggling and having mental health issues. So please know that we sent it out to every single family, and it's been outlined in great detail how they can receive help if they so need it. And of course, we are, to Mr. Kellett's point, we are here all summer. Thank you for allowing me to report. Obviously, last week we culminated with our end of year graduation. We were very fortunate to have really positive weather. We held an outdoor graduation without masks. Students were able to walk across the stage, get their diplomas. This year we had 3 declamation finalist speakers. Those are chosen by a panel of English and social studies teachers. The students gave fantastic speeches. We had over 75 faculty present for the graduation, which was terrific. And it really was a proud night. We had 169 Dover-Sherborn graduates, and we had 6 students who were out of district that also received their diploma from Dover-Sherborn last Thursday. Prior to that, we were able to have an incredibly successful senior celebration. For those of you who know kind of how the extracurricular things with the schoolwork, in traditional years, we have a junior and a senior prom, but because of state restrictions, DESE restrictions and state guidelines, we were only able to have the seniors, but they had a fantastic time. It was held at Granite Links in Quincy. They were able to have their masks off. We, in addition to being in an outdoor setting with great views of the Boston skyline, they were able to dance. They were able to play numerous games outside and really just celebrate one another and have a great time. Thanks to the PTO, who also sponsored a barbecue for our seniors on their last day, which was the 25th. Thank you for Dr. Keogh for coming by. Officer Katie came by from Dover PD as well. And the senior parents who are part of the PTO threw a fantastic barbecue where students got to celebrate and really have some sense of normalcy. And that's really what was important at the end of this school year. Our students were able to do that. We're really excited right now, albeit it's hot, but our students are able to, have their masks off outside. There's a lot more freedom and flexibility, and you can sense it in the kids that they are feeling really good about that. This coming Wednesday, tomorrow morning, we're going to celebrate our book awards. Those are given in honor of teachers and administrators who have attended particular colleges and universities across the United States. And we choose a number of juniors for this award. We have invited their parents, so it will be really nice. It'll be a breakfast ceremony tomorrow morning, and we're really excited about that. We're continuing with professional development. Our teachers are working very, very hard, and I just want to reiterate to folks, this is not a lost year. In fact, we got a lot done, and we did a lot of things. We just finished our AP examinations. We had over 558 AP exams taken with over 224 students. The state forced us to, unfortunately, have MCAS this year. So we had to follow those guidelines, and we have taken English and math, and we will be finishing up science later this week. They gave us a little more time, which was helpful. But, just understand the complexity and the pressures that our kids have been under, as well as our teachers. And here it is, our state is still forcing us to take these exams. Nevertheless, resilience is strong, and the kids did it, and they did really well. And they'll be that much stronger for it. You'll see in my report, we highlighted some things happening in science and in math. Each month we do some different departments. And one of the things I'm really proud of in science is we have co-opted with Medfield High School a science Olympiad team. So that is really exciting too, where they're studying various, focus on various areas in science. We will be continuing that. We'll be continuing with our physics Olympiad, our math team next year, our MARC trial. Over at the high school, we have over 55 different clubs and activities that kids can engage in, and we're hopeful and optimistic that those are all going to be able to be in person. U.S. News and World Report came out with some different rankings, and I know that we have different perspectives on what the rankings, just for the record, we were ranked higher than every single one of those schools that Boston Magazine ranked higher than us, so it flipped. So I think we need to look at the rankings with wide perspectives to see what they really mean, because we surpassed many of those same schools that Boston Magazine saw differently. Yes, it is important that we maintain our standing as a school of excellence, and I can assure you as the principal of the high school, that is my full intent. But I think it's also important that we're addressing all of our students' needs and all of our students' desires and wants to ensure that we're having a full comprehensive educational experience. So it really has been a great end of the school year. Kids have been really excited. Our sports teams have done fantastic and are still playing. It's a little later this year. Puffs was able to go on stage outside, in case you didn't hear. Fantastic job by those kids. Miss Miller and I attended one of the same shows on a Saturday, and those kids had to be resilient, dealing with wind and all sorts of situations. So the show does go on, as Mr. Walker said, and it certainly did. And it's something that I'm incredibly proud of, that we marched forward and will continue to be a strong, comprehensive high school. So thank you, Ms. Sharon. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I will take questions from the people because I'm having a little technical problem. Questions from folks? Committee member questions.
Kate has one.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're waving at me down there. Kate.
That's okay. It's funny, Maggie. I can see you in the Not really a question as much as a comment for both Mr. Kellett, Ms. Hurley, and Mr. Smith, that I have just been so impressed with the creativity this year, and especially the end of year festivities. I have a junior, not a senior, but lots of friends with senior friends, senior children, and the senior celebration, the graduation, nothing but raves. I did see Puffs. I was in the audience for the senior awards night, and it was so wonderful to be together again outside and seeing these kids we haven't seen in a year, who each grew a foot. It was just great. So I'm just so grateful for the creativity and the Board of Health members, who I think are not on this call, but who have done a lion's share of work this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And yes, to all the same things that Kate said. It's a remarkable way to end a really hard year. Other school committee comments or questions? And help me if I'm not seeing things because my computer ran out of juice and I had to change. All right. John, thank you so much. Thank you also to Emily Sullivan, specifically regarding all the sports that are going on much later than usual, and to all the seniors who have graduated but seem to continue to be returning to school to play their sports, which is very exciting. And please thank her for tonight. I know she let that track meet go on until the very first bolt of lightning, and that's a hard call. And so we really appreciate her and all the runners. And also she's very fast, like with calling the meet once the bad weather comes. You guys have done a ton of great work. The graduation, I was able to be at graduation, was one of the most emotional events I have been at for high school graduations, partly because I know that these students have really come through a very hard time to have for their senior year and really a year and a half of their high school career, the last, just to be uncertain until that very last moment. I want to thank Dr. Keogh for his speech at graduation. He used a phrase that bears repeating, which is that these students have gone through the fire and really it tested their mettle, and that they've come out of this stronger. And, I got to see a lot of kids' smiling faces. And I think that, whether or not all the adults have come through stronger or not, I don't know, but our students most certainly, they've really made us proud and are back and are strong and are getting stronger. And certainly for folks who need more help, it's there, and we will move on to the next steps of our life post-pandemic. So thank you to all of you who did the things to make that graduation and the events for our seniors be so special. They were really remarkable. All right, moving on to warrant reports. Dawn, anything on the warrant report?
Yeah, I'll just highlight, you'll see the $1.2 million warrant, which represents your annual principal and interest payment on the debt, still in the middle school, which we're, getting towards the end of that, but that's where the $1.2 million is mainly the principal and interest. And then I'm happy to say the $200,000 warrant you see is your contribution to your OPEB. We did have a meeting with our PARS representatives, Judy and Maggie and myself and the treasurer, John LaFleche, and got an update. And our plan is to bring sort of a PARS presentation to you when we bring the financial statements from the auditors in hopefully January. So I think that we'll share with you some good news and sort of paint the picture of where we were with our OPEB liability and how far we've been able to come with some of the approvals and steps that the regional school committee have taken over the last 3 years. So that'll be an exciting piece of information to share with everyone. But I just wanted to let you know that contribution had been made, and you'll also see it reflected in your financial statements. But I thought those two things were worth pointing out.
Thank you. And yes, Dawn, thank you so much for organizing that presentation. It was really thoughtful. And I think that those guys are doing a great job managing our investment. And I'm grateful that we've been able to make that happen, just in terms of long-term stability for our retirees and our finances as well. All right, moving on to number 5, financial reports. Dawn, back to you.
Right. So you'll notice the cumulative report has less bold information on it now, right? Because I'm having less new information to share with you. So as we have been doing all year, it's a rolling report that refreshes your memory each month of where we are financially. I did add a little more information about your expenditures side of it. So I think transportation savings that we talked about with a combination of the regional transportation fund money that we had set aside last year and, savings in transportation for athletic contests. If you remember, some of our beginning seasons in fall and winter were somewhat shortened seasons, so we didn't have as many bus trips. And then we ended up having some savings from regular transportation because we had the 8 days that were reduced from our contract, and we did not end up having to pay as much as we thought for COVID-related cleaning. So we were able to have little bit of savings from that. So that's driving a big part of your expenditure savings. And then for the majority, I mean, hybrid operations, think about it. We just didn't use as many supplies. We did not have our buildings in use at all during the weekends, which we typically are busy with the town sports, activities. So that was savings in utility, savings in custodial cost. So at the end of the day, the hybrid operations obviously resulted in some cost savings in our budgeted expense accounts that are now, falling to our bottom line and will be returned to the towns. In addition, if you think about back last June, that's hard to believe that a year has already gone by. We were sort of counseled by DESE and our financial experts sort of at MASBO to be really conservative. So if you remember in June, you actually approved $200,000 of your E&D to offset your revenue, because at that time the state budget had not been anywhere near being approved, and we were concerned about our Chapter 70 revenues. In addition, we were concerned about regional transportation reimbursement, which is why we put our last chunk of regional transportation reimbursement from last year into our fund. So none of that came to be. So we are now seeing all of that savings that we thought we needed from last year rolling to your bottom line this year. So what I did for you is sort of put together, like I did last year, the pro forma roll forward of your E&D. I think this is helpful for both you and the finance committees of the two towns to sort of see what we're looking at as potential turnback based on our operations that we know today. I will say the financials aren't as cleaned up now because we have just constantly been chasing ourselves. So I still do have a few orders we need to do, a few encumbrances we need to adjust, but I think this is our best guess right now. And so you can roll through sort of the ins and outs of how the E&D calculation happens. So you start with last year's certified E&D, and you'll be able to trace all the numbers back. You'll see we had a revenue surplus of about $70,000. We're estimating operating surplus of about $1 million. When you approved the budget in March, we did approve funding for capital projects from E&D, and also we already knew we had a revenue surplus, so that's the $210,000 of E&D that we applied to fiscal year 22 budget. So those monies have been set aside to be used. So when you deduct that and then calculate what our projected allowed E&D is, which remember is 5% of your fiscal year 22 operating budget, that means we're potentially returning $500,000 to $600,000 to the town. So once our E&D is certified next year, we will reduce the payments to the towns to their assessments for whatever amount that is turns out to be. And just for the two towns finance committees, remember then that's spread back based on the assessment percentages from fiscal year 21. And so as soon as we get E&D certified, hopefully, they really sort of lingered this year, but if in a good year, we should have it certified for you by September, and we'll know where we are. So I think that's good news. And I think the towns deserve to get back the money of the savings that we didn't have to incur because of the way we operated. But I still think we ran a A++ school operation this year. There was just certain consumables and expenses that we didn't have to incur. So I think all in all, we've come out on the other end in a really good shape.
Thank you so much, Dawn. The numbers look really good, and I'm really grateful that we didn't need all the things and all of the various supplies, but appreciate that we've been able to get through the year with everything that we need and able to give some stuff back. Questions from members of the committee on the financial report? Anne?
Thanks, Maggie. Thank you, Dawn. You always do a stellar job, but I feel like this year, as you said, you're chasing your tail the whole time. It's been a huge undertaking, so thank you so very much. Quick question, did the additional COVID funds from state and federal level also contribute to that, or was that to our, because there
Not really. really, the COVID-related funding is supposed to be for unbudgeted costs. So we were pretty conscious about only using the COVID money for, cleaning supplies that we didn't have budgeted, technology we didn't have budgeted, staffing that we didn't have budgeted, the pool testing costs. So anything that we used the CARES money for were things that we had to specifically purchase or acquire because of COVID-related operations. So the things that you're seeing savings in here are just things that, we didn't use as many school supplies. For the custodians, we, attributing to that is we didn't have any summer staffing, which is about $17,000 savings. We didn't have as much overtime because we didn't run the gyms all season. Part of that too is, remember, we haven't had a director of facilities. We've just had a part-time person. So, and then we've had several staffing changes that really produce revenue, payroll savings for us. So that wasn't really COVID related. So it was just one of those years where it's a combination of routine things and unroutine things that have accumulated the $1 million.
Thanks, Dawn. Thank you, Anne. Other questions from the committee?
Let me just add one. I didn't put it in the report, but I don't know if here Dover has become a hotspot for movie productions. And so I just wanted to let the committee know that we have rented our parking lots for the week after school is out. You probably won't notice if you drive by during the day because they're parking here from 5 p.m. to 6 a.m. So they're doing overnight shoots both in Dover and Sherborn. But if you heard it on the streets, I just wanted you to know that we have entered into a contract to rent our parking lots, and you'll see a tent on the practice football field for those 4 days, because that's where they are processing their extras for hair and makeup. So it's been a nice little change of pace for me to be able to go meet with, production site assistants. There's another production also taking place in Dover. They're renting the Chickering parking lot, but that's running through Park and Rec. So I will just say, if you're driving by Pagan Lane, there is a lot of stuff going on up there on Pagan Lane in Dover for the filming world. So just wanted to let you know, and it's actually a nice sizable, we're getting $11,000 for the rental of the parking lot, which will go into our building rental funds. So I think that is, again, why you see potentially why the Massachusetts legislative allows the 25% tax credit for movie productions, because it does spur economical business in the state. We hope now that we're sort of been introduced to it, I hope they don't get rid of that. You'll see on the news that is something they are talking about. But it definitely has been a benefit to Dover-Sherborn Public Schools this particular, for just a week. I'm making more than I get probably in a whole year renting the middle school gym. So we're pretty excited about that. So I wanted to let you know, in case it came up, that it was taking place and they're using our parking lots overnight.
That would be an interesting piece of news for the town, to wonder what kind of midnight classes we're meeting at the high school.
Exactly.
Sharing that with our community.
What's the insider intel on that movie?
Yes, it's Showtime's filming Dexter. If anyone watches Dexter.
Not a family-friendly movie, people.
No, I don't believe so.
Not
and the serial killer lives in Sherborn, just telling you.
Oh, not for the children. Just, we're happy to let them rent our parking lot. All right. Other questions on the financials? All right. Thank you again. Huge thank you, Dawn. Next item on the agenda are the approval of the 21-22 student handbooks. Copies of those are in your packet. I didn't see any substantial changes from our first read. I think they're the same. And so are there any, for folks got a chance to read through them, are there any comments or questions before we take a vote? Okay. Yes, Kate.
I just have a question, and it's really minor and nitpicky, so I apologize. But let's see. It says in proposed verbiage, offenses / discipline only modified. After the teacher and student meet, and it has been confirmed, there will be an academic consequence determined by the teacher. feel like there needs to be a word in there. The incident has been confirmed. This might be my English major annoyingness coming through. It has been confirmed that there has been
that there should be an academic consequence, which will be determined by the teacher. We can clean that up. Yes.
I know it's really petty. I'm sorry, but it just was that stood out to me.
Sure.
But otherwise, I think it looks great.
Thanks for catching that, Kate. Any other comments, questions? Okay. In that case, I would like to invite a motion that we approve the handbooks for the year of 2021. I cannot get that year out. For the year of 2021 and 2022, with the change as suggested by Mrs. Potter.
Ann Hovey, so moved.
Motion by Ann Hovey.
Lynn Collins, second.
Second by Lynn Collins. If all the regional school committee members could take themselves off mute for a roll call vote. Kate Potter.
Yes.
Tracy Mannion.
Abstain. Thank you.
Ann Hovey.
Ann Hovey, yes.
Judy Miller.
Judy Miller, yes.
Lynn Collins.
Lynn Collins, yes.
And Maggie Sharon, yes. Thank you. Great. Next item on the agenda is to approve the school improvement plans for the middle school and the high school. Again, this is our second read, so we had a chance to get a presentation on them and to ask questions at our last meeting. Are there any questions or concerns at this time? Yep, Ann?
Thanks. It's neither a question or concern, really. I just think that it might be really helpful if either John or Scott can really quickly say who the school council or what the school council is for those who are listening. And I think that might be some really helpful background.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
I'd be happy to go, Ms. Sharon. So the state law requires all public schools to have what are called school councils, and it is basically representative government working at its best. So on those school councils, you have parents, you have, in the case of the high school, you have students, you have teaching faculty, you have a school committee rep, and you also can have representatives from both Dover and Sherborn. We sometimes are successful with that. Sometimes we struggle getting some people. But then there's also, as I said, teachers, parents, students. The high school, the student component is fantastic because we feel as though it provides them with ownership. School councils are responsible for creating a school improvement plan, giving input on the budget, giving input on school culture, and input on student handbooks. And we meet monthly as a group. And I have found our school councils to be really interesting, great conversations where people are able to put great ideas on the table, and it's all about making our school better.
Thank you. And if people are interested in getting involved in school council, what's the process of that?
So yeah, they can email me, smithj@doversherborn.org. And what I typically do is we have had parents who serve. We have Dover parents, Sherborn parents, and Boston parents on our committee. And we typically like to have people serve 2 years because we do like a little continuity. But then after the 2-year, we do like to have some new people rotate on, so it gives an opportunity for more parents to get involved. Students, on the other hand, I do like to, if they wish, as starting as a freshman, I do like for them to continue through. I think it's something really important for them. It also shows great continuity in their college applications and leadership. And students who serve on school council also receive community service hours, which, as many of you know, we have a 40-hour requirement in order to graduate. And I can think of no better way to serve your community than to be actively engaged in the process of school improvement.
Great, thanks. And Mr. Kellett, is it the similar process for parents or community members who want to get involved in the school councils or interested in the work of the school council at the middle school to email you?
Yes, we'll send an email out, a reminder out in the fall, looking for people who have interest. We do not have students on our school council just because of their age, and but we have parents from Boston, Dover, Sherborn, and then we solicit community reps. My practice has been to try to get the community reps to be of a parent who is of a child in the elementary schools. And that the reasoning there is if they don't have older siblings in the middle school, they don't know a lot about the middle school, so they will get that information and be able to share it with their friends at the elementary schools. So it's a win-win, and they get, we get to know their concerns as they're coming into the middle school as well. So it'll help direct us as to what we need to provide for parents and students of our rising sixth graders.
That's a really thoughtful idea. I think I'm going to steal that for my work too. So thank you for that idea. We have issues with finding community members sometimes, so that's a great idea.
I reach out to Deb and Barb, and they'll give me a list of folks, and then we reach out to them.
That's great. Tracy.
I had a quick question, Mr. Keller. Is there a limit to the number of parents that can serve on those boards?
We don't want to have a group that is overwhelming, but we try to have a balance of teachers, faculty members with parents. This year we had, I think it's 4 parents, maybe 5 parents. But we haven't, in my time, we haven't had to limit it.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any further questions on school improvement plans? Right, then this is another action required item. So if you could take yourself off mute. And do I have a motion to approve the school improvement plans for both the regional high school and for the middle school? For the 2021-22 school year.
Sorry.
So Judy, that's okay. Judy Miller made the motion, and so do I have a second?
Kate Potter, second.
Seconded by Kate Potter. And I'll take the roll call. Kate Potter.
Discussion.
Oh, so sorry. Yes, discussion.
Can I just say thank you to everyone who worked on this? It's a really, really vital part of the school process that I think people don't know about, but thank you to the administrators, the teachers, the parents, community folks who helped with this.
Thank you. And Ms. McCoy too, who I think also helps with these, I think. Yes. I see her in the middle of our faces here. Thank you, guys. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote. Kate Potter?
Potter, yes.
Ann Hovey?
Ann Hovey, yes.
Tracy Mannion? Abstain? Okay, thank you. Judy Miller?
Judy Miller, yes.
And Lynn Collins?
I'm signed in under Liv. Lynn Collins, yes.
Thank you. And Maggie Sharon, yes. All right. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. So for folks visiting us tonight, this is basically a for information part of the agenda, but we do vote to accept the consent agenda. And there are a number of items on the consent agenda tonight. A high school field trip being proposed, and we'll certainly have a chance to ask questions about that if folks have them. The donation, the appointment of our regional treasurer, and then the approval of the minutes. So hang on, I'm going to just scroll down to it just to provide some clarity here for a second. Sorry. Okay, hang on.
Maggie, by chance, could I have John just give an update on the trip? On what's
I would love that. That's the first item. So yes, there is a field trip being proposed to the Southwest Canyon Country Adventure. John, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure, Maggie. So Scott Huntoon and Kelly Manise, 2 English teachers and avid hikers and travelers, worked with a company that does trips out to the American West. And one of the things that we thought would be fantastic would be an interactive outside trip where students were engaged in hiking and learning about nature, exploring parts of the West, and some of the the grand national parks that are out there. Some of you may know that we every year do a winter leadership trip, and it really, for many kids, it's one of the highlights where kids really engage with nature. Well, this would sort of be a little bit different. It would be over April vacation, wouldn't really miss any school at all because the way that it works with Good Friday this year. It would be chaperoned by 2 teachers as well as one of their spouses. And as you can see in the itinerary, there's a 7 and an 8-day trip. We would follow the recommendation of the regional school committee. I think that they would like to do the 8-day trip because they feel like they can get that much more in. We have met with this group. They are a reputable group. You can see in your packet the number of private schools and public schools that have engaged their services. They've been vetted. They actually now have insurance because of the uncertainty with COVID and restrictions. They have greater insurance return policies for parents putting money down. And as always, they will be doing some financial fundraisers to help offset some of these costs. But we just think it's a fantastic trip. We actually have another one going to the Bahamas to do some research on sea turtles, and we feel like this fits in perfectly with our Portrait of a Graduate and creating these lifelong skills and opportunities to see different parts of the country and to really get kids to explore and engage in leadership opportunities.
Thanks. So let's entertain any questions folks have on this one before we move on to other items. Questions about the trip to the West? Kate?
I think you said this, Mr. Smith, so this would be our first time using this company, is that correct?
This company, yes, we use them. My understanding, prior to my arrival, there were some trips that had gone, but yes, first time in quite some time, yes.
Okay, and I did read through all the local public and private school groups that have used them. I also, and forgive me if it's in the packet and I missed it because there were so many pages and I did try to look, but are there any scholarship opportunities for students who can't afford 3,000 something?
Sure. So similar to some of our other trips that we've done, when we went to the Galapagos, when we went to the Bahamas, in some cases there are opportunities where students can engage in fundraising activities, and that will be part of the process that if the regional school committee does approve this trip early next week, they would be meeting with interested parties to talk about what some of those fundraising activities would be.
Okay, thank you.
Anne?
Just sorry, John, to clarify that, so that would be fundraising for all the students who'd want to participate, as opposed to providing, as Kate mentioned, sort of a scholarship for someone who can't afford more than, or maybe any at all.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that, that's obviously something that perhaps we can look at with money that has been gifted to the district, and that's something that I could work with the business office around. We don't typically, with our field trips, from a blanket statement, idea of just giving everybody, there needs to be a need, just like when we waive athletic fees or user fees. We just need some notification. We don't need specific data, but we just need notification. And I do know that they want to help offset some of those costs. But like, many of the trips that we do, there is a cost associated that in order to have these great experiences, it does cost.
Other questions about the trip? Okay. Yep. Lynn?
Are there, I know it's an educational travel program. Are there formal sort of educational courses that are taught in connection with this, or is it just part of the experience of, visiting these places?
Well, they'll certainly visit these places, but then they'll also have a lot of, they'll be attending educational classes with National Park Rangers. They'll be learning presentations, history of the areas. similar to what we do when we've gone to the Galapagos, where they'll meet up with local scientists. Here, they would meet up with park rangers who would be teaching the kids about the history of the landscape, probably animals that exist in that area, the history of the National Park Service in and of itself. So there won't necessarily be courses in advance, although these companies can certainly provide us with that information up front.
Any other questions about TRIP? All right. I will say it is very exciting to think that the children could be going on trips again. So that makes me very happy, like very, very excited and hopeful. All right. The next item on the consent agenda is to accept the donation from the Friends of the Alpine Ski Organization in the amount of $8,604.40, which is used. Is this used already, Dawn, or is this to be used?
So it is to be used. It's collected for a reason, though. And so any purchases for this initiative will run through us. So they're really purchasing rollerblades, a whole sort of setup for them to do dry land training. Okay. So they did do some fundraising. And the best way to take care of that was to gift it to the region, and then we would take care of procuring the items that they were requesting.
So this is kind of a one-time fundraiser, not like one time forever, but it's not like an annual cost to support.
No, it was a new initiative that they wanted to add to the program.
So they can rollerblade when there's no snow.
Well, it's not just that. New England can be finicky. We can have some great years and we can have some really challenging years. And this would provide our kids with a number of different training tools so that when the snow comes, they've had the proper training. It can be fun because, otherwise without some of it and without the snow, the season's just not the same for these kids who, thoroughly enjoy that sport.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, it seems like, the students who did the fundraising might not necessarily be the students to benefit from the equipment purchase and use. And so that seems also very thoughtful of them for the seniors and the upper class people who did that. So if you're on this call and you did that, thank you. So, all right, questions about ski team donation for dry land training items. Okay. Next item on the consent agenda is to reappoint the district treasurer. We are recommending that the school committee reappoint John LaFleche as the treasurer for the Dover-Sherborn Regional School District for the 2021-22 school year. I will leave it to Dawn to talk about John, but I will say I got to interview John and to be part of the team who hired him last year when our many years prior treasurer retired. And I think he's just terrific. So
yeah, it's been a real pleasure to have him. As you know, our previous treasurer lived out of state, so we didn't have as much personal contact with him. And even with COVID, John's been in once or twice a month. And so it's been nice to have, be able to bounce ideas off of him. As you know, he was a former superintendent, so he definitely has a wealth of knowledge that he shares with the business office. So we're really excited to be able to bring forward his reappointment this evening.
Great. I'm glad that it's working out. That's fantastic. And then the last item on the consent agenda is to accept the minutes of the meeting, our meeting from May 4th. So with all of that said, do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda with the items of high school field trip donation, appointment of treasurer, and approval of minutes of May 4th?
Collins, so moved.
Motion made by Lynn Collins. Do I have a second?
Potter, second.
A second by Kate Potter. Is there any discussion? Yep, Anne?
Can I just really quickly say that I would love for the discussion that John mentioned, that maybe we could look into making sure that there's equitable access to trips, not just this trip, but sort of all trips. I think that's a discussion worth having. Thank you.
I would agree with that. So it seems like something that we should put on a current agenda or think about what are some funding sources to make sure that anybody who wants to take these trips can be part of them, even if their family finances are not going to allow that. I would agree with that. I'll make a note to see what we can do about getting something set up. Any other issues of discussion? Okay, if you could take yourself off mute. Judy Miller.
Judy Miller, yes.
Ann Hovey.
Ann Hovey, yes.
Tracy Mannion.
Tracy Mannion, abstain.
Kate Potter.
Kate Potter, yes.
Lynn Collins.
Lynn Collins, yes.
And Maggie Sharon, yes. Lastly, and this is not an action required items. There are a number of items in the packet for communication. One of them is subcommittee assignments, and those are the list of assignments that members have had over the past year. And so they're included in the packet so that members of the regional school committee can be looking and thinking about where they would like to contribute to the organization in the coming year. So please think about those, and we'll likely have a workshop in the summer on norms and subcommittee assignments. So that will be something coming up. Also included for your information is the class of 2021 matriculation report as currently reported. So maybe some people haven't quite decided yet, but that's how it stands now, as well as the minutes of the Sherborn School Committee on March 9th and the Dover School Committee on March 4th. Is there any discussion about the communication items? All right. At this time, then, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Ann Hovey, so moved.
Thank you. Motion made by Ann Hovey. Is there a second?
Second.
Kate, second by Kate Potter. And we can do by unanimous consent, I think. If you are okay with adjourning this meeting, if you could just raise your hand. Okay, we have unanimous consent to adjourn the meeting. The meeting is adjourned at 8:07 p.m. Have a wonderful night, everybody, and thank you for joining us.